Family, sit down. Lock the door. Put the phone on Do Not Disturb. Because what I am about to walk you through today is going to make your stomach flip, your jaw drop, and your entire understanding of the David Burke case collapse in on itself. New evidence just surfaced in the case against the young singer the internet knew as D4vd, and I promise you on everything I love, nothing about this story is what the public was originally sold. David is not the confused kid who made one horrible mistake. David is not the trembling artist blindsided by a scandal that came out of nowhere. David, according to the receipt sitting on my screen right now, is a calculated operator who allegedly plotted the death of a 14-year-old girl named Celeste Rivas Hernandez to protect a record deal, to protect a new girlfriend, and to protect a carefully polished public image he had spent years constructing. And the people helping David do it? You are not going to believe how deep this rabbit hole goes. You are not going to believe who knew. And you are absolutely not going to believe who is still, at this exact moment, actively profiting off of the child who died. Because here is the part nobody in the mainstream press is willing to say out loud. David and his legal team are, according to whispers behind the courtroom doors, actively coordinating a pre-trial press strategy engineered to destroy the reputation of a dead child. That is not a misprint. That is not an exaggeration. That is the actual plan. They want the jury pool to believe Celeste Rivas Hernandez was the aggressor. They want the world to believe Celeste threatened David. They want the country to believe David was the victim in this equation, a scared young star cornered by a teenager who allegedly wanted to blow up his career if he did not do exactly what she said. And the truth? The truth, according to text messages, DNA evidence, and eyewitness testimony that a Los Angeles judge already deemed strong enough to bind David over for trial, is the mirror image of every single word the defense wants you to swallow. Trust and believe, before this video is over, you are going to see something that will make you feel physically ill. So let me walk you through it, piece by piece, line by line, receipt by receipt. Let's start at the pressure point David could not survive, Asia Collins. Asia is the new girlfriend. Asia is the friend, the touring companion, the streaming co-star, the woman David allegedly wanted to build a public future with. And Celeste, a 14-year-old runaway who had been in David's orbit since she was 11 years old, was standing directly in the way of that future. Sources close to the case are now openly saying that David's motive was not just fear of exposure. It was replacement. He wanted a new woman visible on his arm. He wanted the industry to see a girlfriend of a suitable age standing next to him at listening parties, at after-shows, at the debut album release. And the only obstacle between David and that fantasy was a child who kept texting him, kept demanding to see him, and kept threatening to end his career if he did not leave Asia alone. Remember when I told you this case had a second victim hiding in plain sight? That second victim is the truth itself. And to understand how David is trying to bury it, you have to understand where David comes from. His father is a fixture in the church. His mother, Colleen, raised him inside a strict religious framework with a homeschool schedule that shielded him from the outside world. But somewhere along the way, in the same household that preached scripture and modesty every single morning, David developed what can only be described as a spiritual loophole. And there is a clip, an interview clip that resurfaced this week, where David explains it in his own words. He talks about how the easiest sin to commit is lying. He talks about how you have to separate yourself from the sin. He talks about consequences the way normal people talk about mild inconveniences. Bless it. And in that moment, watching him speak, you can literally see it happen in real time. You can watch a young man convince himself, on camera, that his crimes are not really his crimes. That the child he allegedly murdered is a footnote in someone else's ledger. That the blood he allegedly cleaned belongs to a story he is no longer required to feel. One viewer said it perfectly under the last video I posted. They wrote, and I am quoting exactly, that is word salad from a sociopath who clings to religion for cover. He does not feel guilt. He feels inconvenienced. And every syllable of that sentence tracks with the pattern we are watching unfold in real time. Because David's inner architecture is not remorse. David's architecture is optics. He believes, deep in the marrow of his bones, that he has done the correct thing. He believes the record deal justified it. He believes the new girlfriend justified it. He believes the threat Celeste allegedly posed justified it. And that belief, that terrifying, unshakable belief, is exactly what David's lawyers are about to weaponize in front of a jury. Now let me pull up something Steve the investigator dropped online this week, because Steve is going to be a witness in the trial, and Steve does not miss. Steve went on social media and posted a full section of the text exchange between David and Celeste in the days before her death. The texts show David refusing to see Celeste. He tells her his parents are coming into town. Celeste, who apparently had a sharper memory than David gave her credit for, calls him out immediately. She says his parents are arriving on Thursday. The day after prosecutors say David killed her. Anyway, buckle up, because this next part is unhinged and it only gets worse from here. Celeste keeps pushing. She asks David to explain why she cannot see him before he leaves for Singapore. David tells her his parents are in the house and he wants to have an in-person conversation. Celeste is not buying any of it. She writes back, a 14-year-old writing back to a 21-year-old, and she says, in words I want burned into every viewer's memory, proof of your parents being there. I do not trust you. Send me a flight or something. David, please stop lying. Read that again. Read it out loud if you have to. A child, backed into an emotional corner by a grown man twice her size and 10 times her power, is demanding proof that his own parents exist because she has caught him lying so many times she no longer believes basic facts. That is not a relationship. That is not a romance. That is a hostage negotiation. And the 14-year-old was the hostage. And David's response? He doubles down. He tells her his parents arrive Thursday. He tells her he is busy the day before. That day, in the prosecution's timeline, is April 23, 2025. That day is the day Celeste Rivas Hernandez was killed. Which raises the question, and I want you to sit with this for a second, because I have not been able to stop thinking about it. Did David's parents actually walk into that house hours after their son allegedly ended a child's life? Did they smell anything? Did they see anything? Did they hear anything? Did they know? Because Steve raises a very sharp point in his post. He says he believes David may have been lying about the arrival window. He thinks David's parents may have actually flown in later that Friday for the album release event, then continued to Houston for a pop-up. But he also concedes it would not be shocking if David's parents were in town for the debut. This was the biggest professional moment of David's life. His parents were often at his shows. They were often at his events. They flew in for the milestones. So the timing is not impossible. It is just, and I am choosing this word very carefully, family, convenient. Suspiciously convenient. Convenient in a way that only becomes convenient when you know how the rest of the story ends. Because a body sat in that house for 12 days. 12 full days. And I have said this before, and I will keep saying it until every camera in Los Angeles picks it up. Too many people were coming in and out of that residence for a body to remain undetected for 12 days without someone noticing. Someone knew. Someone smelled something. Someone saw something. Someone heard something. Someone helped clean something. And I have a very specific theory about which someone I am talking about, but I need you to watch every single second of this video before I get there, because the receipts on this next person are absolutely staggering. Steve also floated an interesting question about the Santa Barbara trip that David took during that 12-day window. Was there more going on up there than the public currently understands? Because if the body was moved at any point during those 12 days, if any part of that Santa Barbara detour was logistical rather than recreational, then the circle of people involved widens dramatically. And based on what I have seen from David's inner circle in recent months, I do not believe that circle is as innocent as it wants the public to think. I do not believe it is even close. Now let's talk about a piece of physical evidence that has been quietly haunting me since the preliminary hearing wrapped. Item 7. A plastic bag recovered from the garage. Inside that bag, investigators found wipes. Wipes stained with dried blood. And on that bag itself, forensic technicians recovered 4 separate sets of human DNA. Let me repeat that. 4 separate sets. 1 set belonged to David. 1 set belonged to a second, unidentified male. And 2 sets belonged to 2 different women. 2 women. In David's garage. On a bag full of bloodied wipes. Do you understand what that implies? Do you understand what that reconstructs? Do you understand who would have needed to be inside that house, hands on that bag, participating in whatever act generated that evidence? Because there is video floating around from that same window of time, video pulled from a Twitch live stream broadcast from inside David's home, where a group of young women are laughing in the kitchen. They are talking about chokers. They are talking about lipstick. They are joking about body glitter from Claire's. It sounds harmless in isolation. It sounds like any group of 20-somethings hanging out on a random weekend. Until you remember what may have been elsewhere in that house at that exact moment. Until you remember that 4 DNA sets ended up on a bag in that garage. Until you remember that the person facilitating that live stream, the person laughing loudest in that footage, the person whose ring light lit up the same kitchen the wipes came from, was Asia Collins. Now, remember when I told you Asia was going to become one of the most important names in this case? This is where the wheels come off. Because Asia did not just know Celeste existed. Asia knew Celeste was a child. Asia knew Celeste was a missing child. In February of 2024, more than a year before Celeste died, Asia responded to an Instagram story that was actively circulating a missing persons flyer for Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Asia's reply read, and I quote exactly, "Bro, this is my friend's girlfriend." The person who posted the flyer replied back, asking Asia to confirm, because the child on the flyer was 13 years old. 13. Asia wrote back, and again I am quoting, "What the hell, you are lying." That is not the reaction of a woman who thought David was dating someone age-appropriate. That is the reaction of a woman being confronted with information she did not want printed in writing where a screenshot could survive her later denial. And what did Asia do with that information? What did she do the moment she knew, for a documented fact, that her close male friend was allegedly involved with a 13-year-old? She stayed. She toured. She streamed. She partied. She hung around David's house. She made videos with him. She rode along on the tour. She built her entire public profile on the back of proximity to a man she now knew was allegedly grooming a middle schooler. Her aspiring career as an influencer and actress was, according to every piece of evidence in the public record, built on a foundation of silence about a child who would eventually be found in a Tesla trunk. And there is a low-quality audio clip circulating right now where Asia claims, with the tone and confidence of a woman who has rehearsed her defense in a mirror, that she confronted David about Celeste's age and that he showed her proof Celeste was an adult. Proof. When asked what the proof was, Asia refused to say. She would not describe it. She would not identify it. She would not even confirm what medium it was delivered in. Was it a driver's license? Was it a school ID? Was it a birth certificate? Was it a passport? Asia will not tell us. Because there is no proof. Because Celeste was 11 years old when David first entered her life. Because Celeste was 13 years old when Asia was told to her face. Because Celeste was 14 years old when she died in David's home. There is no document on this earth that could have made those numbers acceptable, and Asia Collins knows it. Everybody knows it. And the jury is going to know it. Trust and believe, this is where I need you to comment Asia knew under this video, because YouTube needs to understand this story is not slowing down and the algorithm needs to feel the temperature of this comment section. Let me show you exactly why Asia's role in this is not passive. Not confused. Not naive. Not a young woman in over her head. There is a Twitch stream floating around where Asia sits next to a male friend and makes what she frames as a joke. She jokes about accidentally flirting with a minor. She jokes about only asking someone's age after you break up so you never have to feel bad about it. She jokes about killing a minor to eliminate them as a witness. She jokes about hiding the body. And the man sitting next to her, a grown man, presumably her friend, goes completely, uncomfortably silent. His face freezes. His body language collapses inward. Because he understands, in real time, that what he is hearing is not a joke. It is a rehearsal. It is a woman calibrating in public how a confession might sound if it were played for laughs first before it ever landed in a police interview room. And this is the same woman who, weeks after Celeste's body was pulled from that decomposing Tesla registered to David's address, posted a TikTok mocking the very situation she was allegedly complicit in. She filmed herself in a satirical bit about being exploited and sexualized by a man with a secret girlfriend. She joked about the secret girlfriend spam calling him because she thinks he is cheating. She joked about how the girlfriend understands because it is quote-unquote work. Read the room, Asia. Read the room. That was not comedy. That was choreographed cruelty designed to keep her name and face in the algorithm while her friend sat in a jail cell awaiting a murder trial for a 14-year-old. One viewer summed it up better than I ever could. They wrote, and this line has been living rent-free in my head all week: Asia did not kill Celeste, but she is a big part of the reason Celeste died. And I hope that weighs on her. If my friend was messing around with a minor, they would not be my friend. And I would never defend them, ever. Especially after that minor ended up in my friend's trunk. That, family, is the standard. That is exactly where the line is. And Asia Collins tap danced back and forth across that line for a year and a half without once, not one single time, picking up a phone and calling a police department. Not once. Not one call. Not one anonymous tip. Not one text to Celeste's family. Not one whisper to anyone who could have intervened while Celeste was still alive. But wait, this next part is where the case turns from disturbing to genuinely infuriating, and I need you locked in because this is the piece the mainstream press is not touching. Because David is not the only person maneuvering right now. His mother, Colleen, is executing what can only be described as an asset laundering operation in real time, in the middle of an active murder prosecution. According to court testimony from David's accountant, Benjamin Greger, a man I watched take the stand personally during the preliminary hearing, Colleen has been systematically moving David's homes, David's real estate, David's cash accounts, and David's publishing interests into accounts and legal entities held under her own name. Every single dollar David earned from an album titled with graphic language about harming women is being quietly repositioned so that when Celeste's family sues in civil court, and they absolutely should, and I am begging them to, there will allegedly be nothing left in David's name to seize. Every property scrubbed. Every account renamed. Every dollar rerouted. Every piece of evidence of David's wealth quietly, patiently, methodically transferred to sweet Colleen. And the family lawyer representing Celeste's people confirmed something even more grotesque in an interview this week. Colleen is actively looking for a new entertainment attorney. Colleen wants David's publishing catalog kept intact. Colleen intends to continue David's music career from behind prison walls if he is convicted. Read that again out loud. She wants her son, a young man facing first-degree murder charges with special circumstances for the death of a 14-year-old, to keep releasing music. From a cell. To a fan base. For profit. And she wants that profit to flow directly to her, into the accounts she has spent the last year populating with his transferred assets. This is not a mother in denial. This is not a grieving parent in shock. This is a business partner in mid-negotiation. And every second we spend pretending otherwise is a second stolen directly from Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Bless it, because it somehow gets worse. There is documented industry precedent for what Colleen is trying to construct. Another artist, one who was sentenced to prison years ago for shooting a woman in the foot, recorded and released an entire album from behind bars. It happens. It is legal. It is monetized. And the industry, disgracefully, rewards it. As one viewer under my last video put it, and I have to sit with this every time I read it, we reward men who harm women. I am so tired of typing that sentence, family. I am so tired of it being true. That is the exact word David used. About a phone. Who uses the word dismembered about a piece of consumer electronics? A person for whom that word is currently doing double duty inside his own subconscious. That is not a slip of the tongue. That is a leak. That is a signal from a brain trying not to say something else. And investigators have already confirmed publicly that the missing phone in question contained a full backup pulled from iCloud data, which means every text message, every location ping, every photo, every voice memo, every note David thought he had erased is now sitting inside an evidence locker, waiting to be projected in high definition onto a courtroom wall in front of 12 jurors and a judge who has already seen enough to send this case to trial. Every single time David spoke in public in the weeks after April 23, 2025, he was building a case against himself without realizing it. He bragged about being the first Fortnite artist to use his own song in a montage. He gushed about how his SoundCloud numbers surpassed his gaming videos. He talked about his mother reacting to the song titled Romantic Homicide, a song literally titled about killing a romantic partner, and how thrilled he was that his own mother was disturbed by it. He said, and I am quoting his exact words back at you, I knew it was cool if she hated it. He said the disturbing reaction from his own mother was proof that he had a hit on his hands. He said his mother told him the song was too violent, that he was talking about killing people in his music, and his response to her was that he might be onto something. Then he laughed. He laughed, family. On camera. About the song that would go viral overnight after allegedly foreshadowing the exact crime he now stands accused of committing. For a young man homeschooled inside a heavily religious household, David built a public persona designed almost entirely around rebellion. Sneaky rebellion. Whispered rebellion. Rebellion carefully dressed up as art. Rebellion monetized on major streaming platforms. Rebellion nominated for awards. Rebellion booked at Coachella. And somewhere in that carefully curated persona, the line between provocation and prophecy dissolved into something the jury is going to have to look at, directly, without flinching, when the case finally opens. Now, before I bring this home, I need to walk you through one more piece, because it changes the shape of this entire trial. District Attorney Nathan confirmed this week, on camera, in front of every reporter in the county, that the door remains open for the defense to submit a plea offer. But, and this is the sentence that matters more than any other single sentence in this update, only if that offer, in the district attorney's own careful words, delivers justice for the victim's family. This is a first-degree murder charge with special circumstances. The two available sentences in California are life without the possibility of parole, or the death penalty. There is no middle ground. There is no negotiated compromise. There is no comfortable backroom plea deal that lets David walk out of a courtroom in 10 years with a paperback memoir and a redemption arc pitched to Netflix. And yet, and I want you to sit with this for a second, because it is the piece that keeps me up at night, there is a non-zero, mathematically real possibility that David's team tries to buy their way toward a lighter outcome by dangling money at Celeste's family. That is exactly where Colleen's asset relocation operation may quietly come back into play. A settlement offer. A private payment. A civil deal orchestrated in parallel with the criminal proceeding. Something that never technically touches the criminal court record but softens the criminal outcome by proxy, because a family that has been financially made whole in civil court is, in the eyes of some prosecutors and judges, a family whose grief has been quote-unquote acknowledged. I do not want to see that happen. I refuse to see that happen. I do not want a 14-year-old's death monetized twice, once by her killer's discography, and once by his lawyer's checkbook. Because let me tell you exactly what I actually want, on the record, so nobody can misquote me later. I want David to sit through every single piece of evidence, in open court, in front of the jury the judge just approved. I want the 4 DNA sets from that garage bag identified, one by one, on the official record. I want Asia Collins on the witness stand under oath, walking a jury through her February 2024 Instagram reply message word for word. I want Colleen's accountant explaining, under penalty of perjury, exactly which properties were moved and exactly when they were moved and exactly which account they landed in. I want Steve the investigator to lay out that entire text exchange between David and Celeste in front of 12 human beings who will finally understand what a child was begging for in her last days on this earth. I want the words, "Please stop lying," to echo off the walls of that courtroom until they land somewhere permanent inside every juror's chest, and inside every reporter's notebook, and inside every viewer's memory. Because Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 11 years old when David allegedly entered her life. She was 14 years old when he allegedly ended it. She was found decomposing inside a Tesla registered to his address. She spent 12 days inside a home her mother did not know she was inside of. And the only reason the world even knows Celeste's name today is because a random stranger opened a car door, refused to look away, and picked up a phone to call the police. That stranger did more for Celeste in 10 minutes than her killer's entire inner circle did in 12 days. David does not get to walk away from that. Colleen does not get to profit off of that. Asia does not get to joke about that. The family lawyer said something in his interview this week that I have not been able to stop thinking about. He said Celeste's mother wants her daughter's story told correctly. Not sensationally. Not scandalously. Not virally. Correctly. And I have wrestled with that sentence for days, because in the current media ecosystem, telling a story correctly and telling it loudly are increasingly the same job. So I am going to keep telling it loudly. I am going to keep pulling receipts. I am going to keep reading the text messages out loud on camera. I am going to keep timestamping the lies. I am going to keep naming the enablers. Because Celeste no longer has a voice, and every single one of us who watches this channel, who comments on these videos, who shares these clips, now shares custody of hers. Let me remind you of a few more numbers before I close this out, because the numbers matter. April 20th of 2025, the general window when Celeste was last seen alive. April 23rd of 2025, the day the prosecution alleges David killed her. 12 days, the length of time Celeste's body allegedly remained inside David's home. Thousands of unreleased songs, the size of the catalog Colleen is allegedly trying to preserve behind bars. 4 sets of DNA, the number of people forensic scientists placed on a single plastic bag inside David's garage. 1 preliminary hearing, during which a Los Angeles judge listened to 5 days of grim, unsettling testimony and ruled that every single charge against David sticks. 3 charges, murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and 1 additional special circumstances allegation that unlocks the death penalty as a sentencing option. 1 jury pool, being assembled right now in a Los Angeles County courthouse while David sits in a jumpsuit and his mother meets with entertainment lawyers on the outside. Every one of those numbers represents a decision a grown adult made. Every one of them represents a moment David could have stopped, could have confessed, could have handed himself in, could have called a lawyer, could have called a therapist, could have called his own mother in a real way instead of the transactional way he apparently calls her now. Every one of those moments was a fork in the road. David chose the same fork every time. And a 14-year-old girl paid the entire tab. And while we are cataloging decisions, let's talk about the decisions David's inner circle made in the aftermath. Because a murder does not stay hidden inside a busy household for 12 days without a support system. It just does not. That is not how houses work. That is not how smell works. That is not how human beings react when something is deeply, viscerally wrong in a shared space. Somebody in that house adjusted a thermostat. Somebody in that house lit a candle. Somebody in that house told a friend not to come upstairs. Somebody in that house rescheduled a delivery. Somebody in that house pulled a stream link so viewers would not accidentally hear something in the background. Each of those small decisions is, in the eyes of the law, potentially a link in a chain that stretches directly toward the word accessory. And every person who made one of those small decisions is going to have to explain themselves to a prosecutor eventually, or explain themselves under oath. Let me tell you something else that has been bothering me. There is a clip going around where David, in the middle of a totally unrelated conversation, tries to explain away a foul odor inside the residence. He blames it, casually, on a trip to the restroom. Please. Please. Decomposition does not smell like a bathroom. Decomposition smells like the end of the world. Anyone who has ever worked in emergency response, in forensics, in a coroner's office, in hospice care, will tell you the exact same thing. Once you have smelled it, you never mistake it for anything else again. So the question becomes not whether David and Asia and the rest of that circle could smell what was allegedly in that home. The question is why they chose to keep filming content on top of it. The question is why they chose to keep laughing on camera on top of it. The question is why they chose to keep glittering their eyelids and picking out chokers on top of it. That is not naivety. That is not youthful cluelessness. That is a group of adults making a series of small, incremental choices to keep a public brand alive while a child's remains allegedly waited 15 feet away. And let me remind you of one more piece of texture from Asia's timeline that I want burned into your brain before we close this out. On June 9th of 2025, after Celeste was allegedly already dead but before her body had been publicly recovered, Asia posted 3 words on social media. 3 little words. Tell her about me. Tell her about me. Who was she talking to? Who was the her? Was it Celeste? Was it a taunt into the void aimed at a girl she now knew would never see the post? Was it a private in-joke between herself and David? Was it a public flex to a fan base that did not yet realize what those words really meant? We may never get a definitive answer. But a jury is going to be asked to interpret it. And Asia is going to have to sit in a chair and explain, out loud, on a public record, what she meant when she typed it. Good luck with that. One more thing before I close the loop, because this is the part one want the algorithm to catch and the newsroom producers to catch and the true crime podcast circuit to catch. If you have been following this case since the Tesla was opened, you already know the mainstream framing has been unusually gentle toward David. Unusually. The initial coverage leaned heavily on the phrase troubled young artist. The initial coverage leaned heavily on his religious background as a mitigating detail rather than as an aggravating one. The initial coverage leaned heavily on the aesthetics of his music rather than the substance of his lyrics. That framing did not happen by accident. That framing was seeded. That framing was PR. And the same team that is allegedly leaking bad press about Celeste right now is the same team that seeded that early framing then. Which means every viewer of this video, every commenter under this video, every person who shares this video with a friend, is functionally acting as a counterweight to a professional narrative operation that has been humming in the background of this story since day one. That is not paranoia. That is media literacy. And that is exactly why the algorithmic performance of this video matters. Now, I want to ask you something directly, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments below, because YouTube is watching how this video performs and I need every single one of you engaged in a real way, not a scroll past way. Do you believe David deserves a plea deal that spares him the death penalty in exchange for a full public confession and a formal statement to Celeste's family? Or do you believe this case must go all the way to a jury verdict, no matter how graphic the evidence, no matter how long the trial takes, no matter how many witnesses have to relive the worst days of their entire lives on a public witness stand for the world to consume? There is no wrong answer. There are only your instincts. Drop your verdict below. And one more question, because this next one is going to determine the shape of the very next video I release. Should Asia Collins be charged as an accessory after the fact, or does the evidence against her fall short of criminal liability even though it is morally damning beyond words? I have my opinion. You know I do. But I want yours, in your own words, in the comments, right now. Because whichever answer trends hardest in this comment section is the thread I am pulling on next week, and I want your fingerprints on that decision. Look, I know this was a heavy one. I know some of you had to pause the video and take a breath. I know some of you had to close the tab and come back later. I know some of you are going to watch this twice. That is okay. That is understandable. This is the story of a child. It should not be easy to sit through. It should not go down smooth. If it was easy, none of us would be doing our jobs correctly, and that includes me. If I made this story easy for you to watch, I would be failing Celeste as badly as everyone else in her orbit failed her. The trial is coming. The evidence is stacking. The witnesses are lined up. The defense is scrambling. The mother is laundering. The girlfriend is joking. The publishing catalog is being polished for one last commercial run. The prosecutors are sharpening their questions. The judge is calendaring the motions. The jury pool is being sorted. And the little girl at the center of all of it, the 11-year-old who became a 13-year-old who became a 14-year-old who became a body in a trunk, is not here to defend herself. So we are going to defend her. Every video. Every text message. Every DNA report. Every live stream clip. Every laundered dollar. Every buried lie. Every religious loophole. Every rehearsed confession disguised as a joke. Because Celeste Rivas Hernandez deserved better than this. She deserved a mother who could find her. She deserved a school that could reach her. She deserved a system that could protect her. She deserved an adult in David's inner circle willing to pick up a phone. She deserved so much better than what she got. And she is going to get better, from us, from this comment section, from this channel, from this coverage, even if the courtroom itself falls short. I will see you in the very next video. Watch the pinned playlist for every piece of evidence we have unpacked so far in this case, because you are going to need the full timeline to understand what drops next week when I break down the sealed motions the defense just filed. This story is not slowing down. Neither am I. Neither, I hope, are you. Stay loud. Stay skeptical. Stay in the comments. Stay in the receipts. Stay locked in. And do not, under any circumstances, no matter how uncomfortable this story gets, let anybody rewrite this child's story while we are still standing here watching. Bye, family. Talk soon. And hold your kids a little tighter tonight.